A warm welcome to the Exora webinar around how technology is driving sustainability in mining. I'm Nick Mayhew, Chief Commercial Officer here at Exora, and I'm excited to have Pat Lowery join us today. Pat's also on the video. He's had a long and very successful career in mining, working for organizations like Anglo American, and most recently he was Technical Director for De Beers. I'd like to thank you all for joining today, and also if you're listening on demand. And I hope you're keeping safe in these unique circumstances which we're all living with all over the world. A little bit about Exora before I hand to Pat. I wanted to spend a few minutes introducing the company to you. We're a brand new startup, launching initially in the minerals and mining and oil and gas sectors, but soon expanding beyond. We're an innovation hub for digital solutions, and we help leading global organizations discover proven and best-in-class technologies to support and accelerate their digital transformation. We provide a marketplace of proven and digital hybrid solutions that come from world-leading industrial companies, startups, and vendors. For industrial companies, in particular, we help them take what could be innovative yet bespoke solutions they've built to solve operational challenges and help them extract and package in order to allow similar companies to take advantage of their expert work. For those searching for solutions for business challenges, we can offer a world-class set of innovative technologies combined with a strong focus on putting it all in context of the industry value chain, insights and challenges. And we're here to help you transform your business using the very best digital can offer. Welcome to Exora. Discover innovation, unlock transformation. So with no further ado, I think it's time to get on to the topic of sustainability. If you're watching live today, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions in the Q&A window. Our team will monitor that and we'll be doing Q&A with Pat at the end of the presentation. So let me hand to Pat to take us through all the great content we've prepared. Over to you, Pat.
Thanks very much, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. The next half an hour to 45 minutes, we're going to just have a look at how technology is driving sustainability in the mining industry. A little bit on the foundation of where this topic comes from. Let's have a look at some of the pressures that the mining operations are under, and then we'll have a look at a few examples, and then a little bit of planning for the future. So I have to admit, when I was preparing for this webinar, as you do, sitting in my locked down environment in my house by the coast in Brighton, I was challenged by thinking of when we put this content together 2 months ago, how much the world has changed from a sustainability perspective, and what the new reality post COVID-19 is going to look like is obviously quite different. And some of the drivers that we're going to talk about today that maybe some of the companies are really wrestling with will become real license to operate issues in the future, and not something that we talk about. This is a little quote from Mark Cutifani at the recent Mining Indaba in Cape Town on the 4th of February, and I think it spells out, some of the executive vision as the chief executive of Anglo American, where the mining companies sit. And I think as much as we are, Mark Cutifani is probably sitting at home at the moment in his lockdown, wondering how the mining business is going to shape itself in the future, given the enormous challenges from a sustainability point of view that episodes like we're having at the moment are undoubtedly going to bring. But mining companies are serious about sustainability. I think I've seen that I've been retired now for a few years, but towards the end of my career, I think the last few years, there's been a real focus on sustainability issues, driven primarily on external forces, government and various stakeholders who've really started to pick up on the issue and force the mining companies to look internally as to their processes. Now, this is simply a graph of membership of the UN Global Compact, some 13,500 members by the end of 2019, and more than 200 mining companies have signed up. And that list is by no means exhaustive, but does highlight some of the key role players that have signed up to the UN Compact. And I think the challenge here for the mining industry is that although the big mining companies are on board and progressively working towards embedding these type of compacts in their business, the mining industry is seen through a single lens, and there are a number of players, and not insignificant players in the medium tier sphere, that are perhaps not as compliant to legislation and as they could be, and unfortunately, we all get painted with the same brush. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, they're really creating a foundation stone for the way we should be looking at sustainability going forward. I think this framework allows governments and other stakeholders to have a really solid base on which to challenge the mining companies and NGOs and the various lawyers that get involved in this type of process. It's a very solid platform, and the companies and governments are facing increasing pressure to operate within these development goals. Today's landscape in mining is very, very different. I think if they look at where we stand from the perspective of what we all used to kindly refer to as the dripping roasts, the high grade, very easily accessible ore bodies that I've cut my teeth on, they're gone. They've been found, and unfortunately they're unlikely to be found again. So in general, the mining companies are trying to access ground in far more inhospitable regions. It's deeper drilling, there's higher overburden, and we're having to learn technically how to deal with substantially lower grade ore deposits. And to all intents and purposes, as I spend my retirement reviewing projects for mining companies across the world, the technical bit is actually becoming the easier bit. As a technocrat, I find it very interesting that the bulk of the time I spend on reviewing projects is very much now on the social environmental side and permitting and relationships with governments than it is on the pure technical aspects of the job. So I think Mark, again, so I quote him often because I know him, and he is really an adopter of sustainability and technology and mining driving sustainability. And the mining company has suffered criticism for many, many years, and it's a legacy issue that all of us who work in the mining industry have got to be aware of and be really working hard to overcome. There is a perception that mining is not worth the disruption environmentally or socially that it brings. But the one thing that we can guarantee is we all have a vision of electrical cars. That's not going to happen without mining continues. Mining is here. It is going to be here for a long, long time to come. So we need to structure a sustainable way of driving that business profitably forwards. So let's have a look at some of the opportunities that technology can make. And I think it really is a reality that technology has always been driven in the mining companies as a way of improving operations, reducing operating costs, minimizing capital expenditure and various capital footprints, etc. But I think what has become apparent over the past few years is that those same technologies, aptly applied in the industry, can really give us a foothold and be directed towards achieving sustainability goals equivalently to those operating performance goals. So we'll have a look in four little blocks. We'll have a look at some autonomous machinery, which if you have been in the mining industry in the past 10 or 15 years, that really is becoming a bit of old hat. Electrification, some renewable energy, and then the key emerging area of digitization. Autonomous machinery, I think the working with OMEs and on various pieces of equipment, from drills to trucks to whatever. I mean, the whole world of autonomous has taken off considerably. And it's not simply about running a vehicle without a person in and reducing operating cost. The benefits of automation in terms of the stricter protocols of use, we can then reduce use, we can reduce emissions from pieces of equipment, and make them last much longer. Rio Tinto is, in my opinion, has become the leader in the autonomous space. I think in the Pilbara, they have moved, I think it's a few months ago now, the amounts that they'd moved way more than 1 billion tons using autonomous trucks. And I think this is a classical example of how different parts of the mining industry are in a different space in terms of understanding how technology can drive improved performance and contribute to sustainable goals. There are aspects of the mining industry where they're still trialing the technology and trying to work out how it works. And then we have Rio Tinto that have whole mines working on an autonomous footprint. Goldcore, I think, is a really classical, given some classical opportunities here, and in the electrification of their mine. To their mine, remote location, this mine is, I think, somewhere around 170 kilometers east of Timmins in Ontario in Canada. Very remote locations, and those who've ever been there, it's very, very difficult operating circumstances. They've taken diesel out of the operation completely, saving about 2 million litres of diesel a year, about 1 million litres of propane, and consequently about 7,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced per year. And this is all using existing Sandvik battery-powered drills, LHDs, and trucks. It really just shows what can be achieved if we apply our minds. Renewable energy, much talked about. Solar energy is something that flows easily off your tongue when you're talking about sustainability. But I think there's still a way to go here until we derive full benefits from renewable energy. There are 1 or 2 mining operations across the world that have hybrid machines running with diesel and renewable energy sources, and particularly in Australia and Canada. But I think we still have a lot of work to do to get our minds around the sizes of batteries and storage capability that we need to really drive this home into a sustainable way of operations. I think a very good example comes home to me, and during my career I spent quite a lot of time on an equivalent project from Los Bronces in Chile. But here we have the Minera Media Luna in Mexico, and there in the photograph you can see their ore belt going down the hill to the concentrator. So some really innovative thinking there. And not only have they shortened the distances, removed trucks, etc., from the whole process, but they're now harnessing the friction energy and converting that into electrical energy that they have from the conveyor system, and pumping that back into the processing plant to supplement electrical energy and reduce the overall consumption. So it's a very, very innovative way of thinking of doing things. This for me is very much the future. I think we've spent a few years now in the mining industry trying to work out exactly what we mean by digitalization. I think there was a point in time where it was taking off. I think a lot of senior executive people were still unsure of what they were being sold. There was lots of articles in newspapers and technical journals. And I think in the banking industry, and probably in the earlier days where digitalization was far more appropriate, it seemed to be a great success story. I think it's really good now that we are starting to understand that getting our arms around full value chain information and being able to do that in real time with proper, accurate, clean data, which I think has always been a challenge in the mining industry. This will lock our ability to improve efficiencies and derive particular environmental benefits as we go along. I think we're going to have a look at a couple of examples. So I'm not going to go through all of them. Obviously, we don't have enough time, but I think we point out a few of them. Remote operating centers. I think there's been some great work done there with, I know some great work in BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto that I'm very familiar with. I know Anglo-American too. And I think here we have I think something that's going to be even more important in the near future. And as we go through these examples, I think it's good to overlay some of this thinking with the post-lockdown kind of COVID-19 thinking. Remote operating centers for me have been pretty important, given the inability of the mining industry to attract best talent, and the need to bring data to centers that talent are prepared to work in. I think that's becoming more and more a driver, and I think given where we are today, it'll become even more important. I think on the license to operate perspective, I think this is getting more and more complex. I think if we're able to visualize our permitting schemes, develop the correct checklists and controls, and have these running real time as well, it's going to give us a real hand up in terms of staying consistently aligned with changing legislation and requirements. I think the connected mine talks for itself, and I think that's something we've all been wrestling with for many years now. Is taking all of the data that's available from all of these pieces of equipment that are not connected in the mining environment currently, and even connected occasionally wrongly into our EDPs. We get the wrong data out. It's dirty data. I think the whole concept of connected mines and management information systems is a key to not only operational performance, but driving the whole sustainability agenda. The connected worker, I think that's something we've really been focusing on in the past, particularly underground, and protecting man and machinery interfaces. And I think this whole principle of being able to track where workers and machinery are at all times is really breakthrough in terms of achieving our safety goals. And on the community engagement front, I think the social aspects of our business are becoming more and more important. And I've just had a look at a project in the northern province of South Africa, where for the first time we're using 3D systems, cameras, to have a look at layouts of community, understanding resettlement challenges and heritage challenges and how they are growing. And I think the digitalization world has really enhanced our ability to do that. Here's a classical example of some of the work that Tech Resources are doing, and they're using digital monitoring tools to look at the awareness and build trust with the various stakeholders in the new mining environment. And I think this is very much the new way of working and trying to understand how to engage with the communities who have been ensconced where we're trying to mine in these remote locations for a long period of time. And I think we can very quickly underplay it. We don't really understand it, but these smart sensors, they will collect information regularly from our streams and rivers, and we can monitor background contamination. We understand where it's changing, and can automatically produce reports that can be shared with our local communities to give them the comfort that technology is actually working from both the mining company's point of view and their own point of view to protect their interests. So how do we go about building this more sustainable industry strategy. We've got to engage the mining companies in the green economy, and I think it's something that they're working on it. I think there is a real commitment, and I see it myself. I've seen it myself from a lot of the senior folk that I've dealt with in the mining industry over the past few years, and I can take real comfort that this whole agenda is progressing. But I think the key here is that we need this effective environmental regulation. Many of the countries in the EECCA region, there are stringent environmental standards, but I'm the first to say that they're not consistently applied. There are those who, in non-compliance, smear the whole mining industry, and we really need to get onto those folk and get a standard level of compliance and a level of enforcement going. And there are many ways we can do that in terms of license to operate, mining title issues, mining leases, etc. And I think it'll do well when the governments have finally got their way around treating everybody in the mining industry the same. There's a national strategy for the mining sector. It's emerging. It's progressing well in a number of jurisdictions, and I think those where mining companies are best represented, we really are understanding how to attract investment while still making sure that the mines reduce their environmental footprints. I think we need to focus on cleaning up old sites. I think that is something that will help limit the legacy issues that the mining company has. And we really need to mix up policies to make sure we get the right outcomes. We need policy and lead in the national strategy that covers all elements of the business, and again is consistently applied to all of the role players, big and small. Stakeholder engagement is probably the most complex part of the whole business. Again, I think there's a lot of lip service play to stakeholders. I think the latest environment we find ourselves in now with lockdown and COVID is really going to move this myopic corporate focus on short-term returns driven by our monthly and quarterly requirements from stock exchanges. I think it's still business will be business, but I think those longer term issues are going to reemerge, and recognizing that mining companies are here for 25, 30, 40 years and not to be represented purely on a quarterly basis. And we need to know what information has to be compiled and in a format that is really useful to engaging with all of our stakeholders, from the local community, people who live downstream of our operations, to those stockbrokers who sit in their offices in London. We have to be able to satisfy all of them. I think the last is the regulatory tools. Governments are currently regulating quite strongly in different jurisdictions, but we have to work together to show the investors, to show the local communities, to encourage mining through regulatory through our regulating mechanisms, as much as making sure that there are strict controls. It's in the best interests of governments and companies and stakeholders to all work together to make these profitable businesses work, so that we can share the positive outcomes. And I think these whole collaborative arrangements are really starting to come together. The ICSV, Innovation for Cleaner and Safer Vehicles program, has put 27 of the world's best mining companies together to look with the equipment supplier, the OEM equipment suppliers, and to look at the next generation of mining vehicle. And there we have a real opportunity to put something together that the mining companies understand, the mining companies are excited by, they'll engage in. There's this profit incentive as much as there is a sustainability incentive. And they've already agreed, I think, emission-free surface mining vehicles by 2040, as decided on this slide. Minimize diesel exhaust by 2025, and make the what is very successful collision avoidance technology available to all companies by 2025. So some great movement forward there in terms of technology and collaborative effort. Lastly, for the presentation, but very briefly, is building the effective decarbonization strategy. And I think there's lots of work to be done here. I think with this particular element of sustainability is probably not far off where understanding digitalization was 4 or 5 years ago. I think it hasn't really penetrated the operations. I think it's something that is talked about and well understood at the dizzy heights of corporate, but there's a long way to go before we really start to understand what the roadmap is for reducing carbon emissions, how the strategic levers should be realigned to bring those emissions down, what are the cost imperatives, how much capital is involved. And I think one of the things that where the mining companies start to shy is in understanding how technology can support sustainability. The biggest hurdle to overcome is understanding the cost of conversion. The mining industry is old, established, and the technologies are old and established. And going from the old way to the new way normally would require significant investment in capital. And what then restricts our ability to convert to the new way is simply the lead time and the map to get us there. So it's not going to happen overnight, but I believe there's a will. Where there's a will, there's a way, and we have some really senior people in the industry who are 100% behind us. I think with that we can sign off for now. There's a lot of information packed into a very short period of time, and we'll look to take some questions.
Pat, thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely fascinating. I certainly learned a lot myself, and a lot of great examples. I think it's great to bring the story to life with examples of real case studies that you've seen in your career. So thank you very much indeed. And I think in a situation where COVID is dominating the agenda, I think it's important that we don't forget that there are other super important topics for business, and sustainability surely is up there with the most important topic for the mining industry going forward, especially post-COVID, and on the assumption that we all bounce back into more like normality. So thank you very much. Right, yes, we've got time for some Q&A. I'm pleased to say we've had a couple of questions put through already. So what I'll do is I'll just scan the questions and then I'm going to ask you a couple of them. First question. Who do you think is leading the innovation space now in terms of sustainability and operations?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I thought that question might come, and so I'm being the ardent mining professional I am. I don't want to use the first, second, and third because I know too many of the role players. So I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. I think it's safe to say, I know all of the majors are doing what they can. I mean, they're investing a lot of money in R&D. I think they all have roadmaps. And those roadmaps obviously suffer glitches with the cyclical nature of the mining business. It goes a bit lukewarm occasionally, while while we work our way through some of these dips. But I think they're all leading, but they're all leading in different ways and in different jurisdictions. And I think the challenges that the big mining companies are facing are really geographically diverse. So if I look at, the BHPs and Rio Tintos, who are in, they're really leading on the technical front, and take my hat off to them for that. And then I look at the Anglo Americans, who work in some fairly intense social jurisdictions, and I think some of the work that they're doing in terms of stakeholder analysis and engaging with local communities and growing a positive approach to mining companies across in some very difficult territories with some quite difficult to convert. I think they're doing a great job. So I wouldn't like to say A, B, C. I think everybody's committed and everybody's going down a path.
That's a great political answer. I think that's fair to say. But I guess inevitably you've got, as you said, different diverse environments and contexts surrounding each of the big mining companies in particular, right? And no doubt there's some smaller tier 2 miners who are the junior miners, and some of them will be very innovative on their technology as well.
I think everybody's. Well, I don't want to use the word everybody because that's too loose. Because there are, in the mining industry, there are businesses that are smearing the rest, and unfortunately, stakeholders tend to see the mining industry as one big thing. Quite correctly, it is a bit of a club. Yeah. And then, of course, all of the efforts that are put into changing the reputation of the mining companies are all blighted when you have one-off events like that devastatingly sad failure in Brazil of the tailings dam, where a number of people lost their lives, and a lot of the positive energy is lost overnight, and you go back to a very difficult space, and you have to start all over again. So I think the mining industry is going to be faced with that type of challenge for years to come. But I'm very confident that they are pulling together now and going in the right direction.
Great. Let's go to the next question. What do you think is the most challenging issue right now for mining in relation to sustainability? Is there a single issue per se, or is it really multi-threaded?
Look, I think multi-thread is the right answer, and I think we talked earlier about different contexts for different jurisdictions. But I think governmental expectations and the social performance type of issues we're faced with, burgeoning populations in emerging economies maybe not working too well, governments needing to get whatever they can. So there's always going to be royalty challenges. So I think the biggest thing facing the mining industry is simply balancing all of these challenges in an environment where different expectations from different role players are all coming to none of them can be ignored any longer. Years and years and years ago, people just used to get on with it. That doesn't happen anymore. We have to take into account every single role player and stakeholders' ambitions and treat them at a level. And I think getting that balance is probably the biggest challenge that the industry faces at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, great. Do you really believe that large mining companies are really taking sustainability as seriously as they claim?
My honest answer to that is yes, I do. I think there's, as with all businesses, there's a lot of glossy stuff. There's a lot of glossy stuff out there. I mean, if you look at the social performance reporting reports to society that the companies put out today, and you read through them, they only expound the positive. And you can look glibly at that with through a dark pair of glasses if you want to. But I look at my glasses tends to be half full rather than half empty. And I think the very fact that these companies can can fill the glossies with some real examples of what it is that they're doing in many, many places across the world, trying to have a positive influence, says to me, yes, they're on the right path, and I think the future looks quite bright.
That's good to hear. And I imagine when it becomes a board priority, for example, in these large organizations, that's a signature of when it's taken very seriously up and down the organization, and those kinds of things we've seen develop in this industry, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have the indicators now on the various major stock exchanges, sustainability indices that all of these big mining companies, in inverted commas, compete on to be. And it's having a real impact on their investability. So everything is pointing, all the pointers and all the leaders are saying, yes, this is
good.
This is turnaround. Yeah.
Very good to hear. A final question. What do you think mining will look like? This is a difficult question, Pat, but what do you think mining will look like in 10, 20, and 30 years' time? Kind of what's the stargaze say? It's a great question to wrap up with.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, again, all of the companies are having their technology roadmaps and looking at the application of robotics, various other autonomous mining methodologies, in situ mining, which has been around for quite some time, but now actually taking it to a new dimension. But I think what you're going to see is they're going to be clean. They're going to not be a mass employer as they have been up until now. I think you're going to see a lot less people floating around. I think they're going to be extremely high-tech industries. I think they're going to be extremely efficient. And a lot of R&D technology is going into minimizing water consumptions down to no water usage in the mines. So I think the mining industry is going to spend the next 10, 20, 30 years in a very, very fast catch-up mode to become some of the high, if it's going to survive in its current format, to become some of the highest tech industries out there.
Fantastic. Well, what a fascinating session. Pat, I think we're at the end of the webinar and the Q&A. We've finished the questions as well. So with that, I'll just thank you very much for your time today. For our visitors and people that joined the webinar, thank you very much for giving up your time. We do hope it's interesting, and hopefully you've learned a little bit today that helps you be successful in your roles. And also it's great for us to perhaps introduce Exora to many of you. So keep an eye on our developments at exora.com. We'll do some follow-up email to the webinar to allow you to access this on demand, and indeed for the presentation, how to get hold of the presentation. So with that, I think Pat will sign off and say thanks very much again, and goodbye, everyone.